Welcome students to the lecture series of eco105. The reference reading for this lecture would be chapter 2, Thinking Like an Economist by N. Gregory Menkel, Principles of Economics, 6th edition. In the previous lecture, we were looking at the construction of PPF, where we have seen how we can derive the PPF using the different combination of two goods that a country can possibly produce using all its labor resources. And there is a straight line illustrating that the slope of the PPF was constant and the ratio in which we produce the computers and the wheat was also constant. So in today's lecture, we shall be looking onto some other associated concepts that the PPF illustrates, and the concepts that we shall be discussing are efficiency, trade-offs, opportunity cost, and economic growth. Now we shall be looking onto each of the topic in details. First of all, we shall try to see how the PPF illustrates the concept of efficiency. So by efficiency, we mean when all other resources in the economy are utilized at their maximum, or in other words, since the labor is our only resource of production, by efficiency we mean that we are using all our labor resources at their maximum level. Now, to check back how the PPF illustrates the concept of efficiency, let's look at the graph and find the point that represents 100 computers and 3000 tons of wheat. That point would be point F here. So at this point, you see that the economy is producing 3000 tons of wheat with 100 computers. So we require 100 labor hour to produce one computer. So if we are producing 100 computers, total labor hour that we are utilizing is 100 times 100, that is equals to 10,000. Similarly, to produce 1 ton of wheat, we require 10 labor hours. So since we are producing 3000 tons of wheat, so the total labor hour in the wheat sector is 3000 times 10, that is equals to 30,000. So 30,000 labor in wheat industry and 10,000 labor in computer industry. The total labor that are used here is 40,000 labor hours. Now if you remember, we are given that the total labor resource of the economy is 50,000. But here when we are producing at point F, we are only using 40,000 labor hours. So there are excess 10,000 labors which we can use to produce more of wheat and computers. So any point that is inside the PPF is not efficient because we can produce more of both the goods using the labor that we have. So in other words, any point that is inside the PPF is attainable but is not efficient because that will leave more labors unutilized. Similarly, at point G, the country produces 3,500 tons of wheat and 300 computers. So to produce 3,500 tons of wheat, the country requires 35,000 labor hours, and the other hand, to produce 300 computers, we require 300 multiplied by 100, that is equals to 30,000 labor hour. So the total labor required to produce at point G is 65,000 labor hour. But remember, we are fixed by the number of labor hour, which is equals to 50,000. So producing at point G might be very efficient because the country would be producing more of both the goods, but at the same time producing at G might not be attainable for the country simply because it doesn't have enough labor resources to produce at point G. So any point that is outside the PPF is very efficient but is not attainable. Only the points that lie on the PPF, that is the point from A to E, are both possible and efficient, because at all of these points the country is producing the best possible combination of goods and services that it can, and it uses all of its labor resources at their maximum level. Points under the PPF, like the point F, is possible and attainable but is not efficient because some of the resources would be underutilized. On the other hand, points above the PPF, like point G, is very efficient because the country produces more of both the goods, but is not attainable simply because the country doesn't have enough labor resources to produce at this point. So only the points on the PPF are thus both efficient and is attainable. And that is how the PPF illustrates the concept of efficiency, and it ensures that when we are at any point on the PPF, we are producing an efficient combination of goods. Now we see another example. Again, we have a two-board economy which produces only computers and cars, and the economy has only one resource, that is labor resource, which is measured in hours, and the total number of labor here is 5,000. And this is the PPF that we have for the computer and car industry. So this is the hypothetical data that is given, and using the data we have drawn the PPF. Now, as opposed to the previous example when we had a straight line PPF, here you can see a convex bored out PPF, and like before, you see at each point of the PPF we are producing different combination of cars and computers. And you can also see that at point A we are producing 2200 computers and 600 cars, and at point B we are producing 2000 computers and 700 cars. Points F, A, B and E all are efficient and are on PPF. Points inside the PPF, as such point D, is again possible but is not efficient because we have more labor to produce more cars and computers. Similarly, points like C, like before, is very efficient but is not attainable because the country doesn't have enough labor resources to produce at that particular point. Next, we move on to another concept that is explained by the PPF, and which is trade-off. So by trade-off, we mean when we choose one kind of product over the other, or in our case, when we are producing computers and cars and we are showing the combination in the PPF, that PPF tells us how we can change the production of computers in order to increase the production of cars and vice versa. So using all its resources, in car industry, the economy produces 1000 cars and 0 computers. Or using all labors in computer industry, it produces 3000 computers and 0 cars. And these are, like before, the two endpoints of PPF, which represents extreme possibilities. At point A in the PPF, the economy divides its resource to produce 2200 computers and 600 cars. Moving some factor from computer to car industry, it increases the number of cars to 700 and reduces the number of computers to 2000. Please go back and check point B. So at point B compared to point A, the country is producing 100 more cars, but in so doing it had to reduce the production of computers by 200. And why is that? Because the labor that we have in our economy are fixed and cannot be changed. So if we want to produce more cars, the only way that we can do so is by reducing the number of computers. And since this labor resource is scarce, there is a trade-off that we are making along the PPF. That is, in order to produce more of cars, we are giving up more computers, and in order to produce more computers, we will have to give away some amount of cars. So there is a continuous trade-off, and that trade-off is well explained along each and every point of the PPF. Next we move on to a new concept, that is opportunity cost. In economics, opportunity cost is the cost of trade-offs that we make. It is a sacrifice we make in choosing one option over the other. As we have already discussed that in your life, since the resources that we have are scarce and limited, so we cannot at the same time have all other options that are available to us. So for example, if you have given up your peaceful sleep to attend this lecture today, then your opportunity cost of watching this video will be the pleasure that you could have get while sleeping instead. So opportunity cost measures the sacrifice cost that we make in choosing one option over the other. Next, we look at the graph and explain how the PPF illustrates the concept of opportunity cost. If you compare 2 points on the PPF, point A and point B, so at point A, the country is producing 2200 computers and 600 cars. So if the country wants to produce more computers, or in that case, it will have to reduce the production of cars. Similarly, if it wants to produce more cars and less computers, it will have to sacrifice the computer production, and that sacrifice would measure the opportunity cost. For example, if the country wants to produce 100 more cars, in that case, it will have to give up the production of computers. As we can see from the graph, if the country produces 700 cars, the amount of computers it can produce would be 2000 computers. And this occurs because of having fixed amount of labors. And since labor is fixed, if we are using more labors to produce cars, we will have less amount to produce computers, which is again, as discussed before, is the concept of trade-off. So here, moving from point A to B, we are making a trade-off, and the cost of trade-off is here the opportunity cost, which is to produce 100 cars, the opportunity cost would be 200 computers, or to produce 200 more computers, the opportunity cost would be 100 cars.